The future of work will be fluid, dynamic, and cloud powered, with experiences that allow us to be there from anywhere at any time, with meetings that you can join seamlessly, that bring us together, that are inclusive, and everyone clearly represented. We see a future where meetings are immersive and spaces are designed around people, bringing everyone together around the same virtual table, even if they're not in the room. And dynamic meeting views that keep everyone connected to the content and each other. And everyone can connect face-to-face wherever they are with intelligent gesture recognition that uses AI to recognize physical cues, like when people want to speak and when they've spoken. With interactive experiences like collaborative chats that complement meetings, and where presenters can stand out in front of their content. And rich interactive experiences, such as digital canvases, to unleash group creativity. Meetings of the future will be more intelligent, so you can disconnect when you need to, knowing AI-powered tools have got you covered with follow-ups and action items. Our vision for meetings is grounded in a simple belief. They should offer so much more than a one-time transaction, with intelligent tools and experiences that you can access before, during, and after to keep collaboration moving in the flow of work. Meetings of the future will be designed for everyone, offering the best of both worlds, whether you're in the room or across the globe.
Good
Hey, Michel,
morning, good
how are you?
afternoon, good evening. How are you, Jimmy? Good to see you.
I'm doing good. It's great to see you too here on the inaugural episode of Microsoft Teams Rooms Tech Talk.
Man, Microsoft Teams Rooms Tech Talk. So this is going to be a monthly thing that Jimmy and I are going to be doing. Today, exciting topic, front row. But before we do that, let's shout some people out because I'm looking at the chat and we have an amazing international crowd. I see Copenhagen, I see South Africa, I see Netherlands, I see Germany, I see New York, I see Toronto, I see Norway, I see Poland, I see Brazil, I see Netgear. I'm not sure if that's a country, but hey, I don't think so. Uh, I see people from Belgium. I see Czech Republic. Great to see you all. Thanks so much for joining Jimmy and myself today as we're going to be speaking about front row. What is it, Joe? Jimmy? Is it a feature? Is it a layout? What is this front row
Well,
thing that everybody's talking about?
for that, I got to get this, Michelle, because my friends Tom Egan and everybody else are going to know. Front row is a layout. Front row is a layout. I can't say that often enough, and it's the megaphone that needs to scream this because there's a lot of confusion out in the field. What is front row, and how does it actually work into the ecosystem of Microsoft Teams Rooms, and how does it actually help your shared spaces? And really, it is just a layout. But there's so much, Michelle, that actually comes with just that layout. And there's so many things that can be built on and things like that. The video that you played at the beginning, it was almost a year ago that I saw that first version of that video. And it's still relevant today, and it still has so much impact today. And even though, Michelle, Front Row is released in preview out there to the world on the Windows MTR systems, there's still more coming. And this was the first inclination of what GA was. Let's get this out there, and let's make sure that people are seeing it, and let's see what actually people adopt and where people are going to. So I think we should probably concentrate on a little bit about the front row and the layout that you see on the picture right there. That's where a lot of the confusion comes into play.
See, some people are talking about some audio issues. Please refresh the screen. If not, I posted a YouTube link in the comments as well. If you want to switch over from LinkedIn to YouTube, there's a link that you can use as well. Let's talk about this. So this is not GA. This is a preview. Let's start with what's currently in there?
So what's in there is sort of what you see at this screen. Now this is a panoramic room, and that's different from front row. Now front row is on every single Microsoft Teams room systems. You don't need this layout of a room to actually properly experience front row. This is something that will enhance front row and give users a little bit more of that sort of feel that they're inside of the room and feel that they're meeting. But it's not a requirement to have this layout of furniture as front row. This layout is the panoramic room setting, but if you look at the front of the room, you've got people that are actually the height of someone that was sitting across from you. You've got eye level camera, which gives that eye gaze and gives that feeling that people are engaged. Your camera is actually pretty good. Mine is actually up at the top of the screen on my camera on my desktop unit. And it's sort of a little bit tricky because I can't get that eye gaze that I have. But when I'm in a shared space, I want to make sure that I've got that eye gaze to basically make sure that when I'm looking at people, when I'm talking, they feel that and it feels more in person. So at the bottom, you've got that gallery view, which is just above the camera, which gives you that eye gaze and gives you that natural feeling. You've also got the idea on the right and the left of what is now chat and raised hands. That's the first two that we have out there. But Greg Barabelt, who's been working on front row with the team for about a year now, has been very clear. Those are dynamic spaces that will be in front row. And those will actually be using many of the Loop components. If you haven't seen Microsoft Loop yet, Microsoft Loop is another program that's actually worked into Teams. And because it's worked into Teams, even the shared spaces and the Microsoft Teams rooms can take advantage of those dynamic elements that are out on the screen. So in this video, you've got a whole bunch of forward-looking things, including action items, tasks, things, even polls like for Microsoft Loop. Those are the kind of things that can be put up there. In the video that you played, people saw the idea of putting a thumbs up or raising your hand, but they weren't in front of that Microsoft Teams room console, Michel. That's what's coming when you've got an image, when you've got something that's inside of the room, and you've got the availability of knowing when somebody does this, I shouldn't have to press a button to do that. AI and machine learning should know that this is a video and I actually want to go ahead and I want to put my thumbs up, and it wants to attribute it to the person inside of the room, which takes us to another category, which I think people confuse with front row a lot. And that's the idea of the intelligent speaker and the intelligent camera category that's coming out. I know a lot of these things were sort of brought to fruition at once. And first, I'd like to say I saw Tom Arbonneau's post today. Teams is reaching 5 years old. And the amount of features that have been put into Teams in this amount of time is truthfully astounding. Absolutely astounding at how much stuff has come forward. And it's not stopping. There was a blog post today that I posted on LinkedIn. I'm sure you've seen it. What's new in February? There's a lot of things that are coming with that, but the intelligent speakers and the intelligent camera is something that was highly leveraged inside of that video. And that's the idea of when I walk into a room, I don't want to be anonymous anymore, Michel. And when we think back to the way that people were sort of consuming meetings before the pandemic, there's been a huge shift and a huge leverage of who's the premier person in the meeting. Is it the person in the room or is it person remote? And as you and I talk probably every day to partners, hybrid work is coming, and hybrid work is coming faster than I thought. With the return of Microsoft back to the offices officially today, I think you're going to see a lot of organizations start to take that transition and take it back to the office. So when we talk about who's the equal person in a meeting, we've got to think about both that in-person and the remote person. Well, if we think back two and a half, three, go ahead.
Yeah, now what did I say? Let's take these two because we're talking about front row today, but you also mentioned intelligent speakers and intelligent camera. Could we say, because I hear the confusion a lot as well, could we say that front row is for the people in the room, and then intelligent camera is for the people that are dialing in virtually?
We could say that. We could say that. But I think you're going to see a lot of the things sort of mesh and blend as we try to elevate people to equal meeting participants. But there are features, and you've got to think about the features. Who are they geared towards? And Front Row really is geared towards the people that are inside of the room to make it feel more comfortable for them. But then you've got the idea that the gallery view that's at the bottom of that layout is actually for the people that are remote, because when I'm looking at that gallery, I've got that eye gaze of the camera. So it does benefit both. In addition, the raised hands and the chat, all of that being at the front of the room, yes, it's for people that are inside of the room to sort of be aware of what's going on. Like we have here, chat can be a completely different meeting than what we're having on our systems, and making sure that everybody's engaged is part of the importance of all of this. And Front Row comes, like I said, to every single Microsoft Teams rooms on Windows, and the product group has been very clear. It will be coming to Android as well. So regardless of the system that you have, you'll be able to do this. And there's been a whole lot of things around it that came out, such as the fact, what do I want the default layout to be, Michel, when I walk into the room? The idea of Microsoft Teams rooms themselves is, let's make it easy to have meetings. Meetings traditionally used to start 10 to 12 minutes late because of challenges that were with the product that was inside of the room. Now having familiar iconography, all of the icons that are on Teams rooms are the same that are on the desktop. So if users have been actually having Teams meetings while they've been remote, now they're going to walk into a room and they're going to be met with something familiar. Training is still something that needs to be there. All of our partners should be having adoption training and things like that for the users that are adopting Teams rooms, but it's not as extensive as it used to be. Most of it is, this is how I start a meeting. I walk in and I hit my calendar page, and now I'm into the meeting. I'm of the age, and we talked about how old I was earlier, Michel. My knees are killing me today. It's cold in New York, and yes, I'm showing my age. But I'm of the age, and I'm sure that many people here are too. Complicated dial strings. What's the PIN code to dial in? What's all of these different things? What's the IP address? Think back to the ISDN lines and IP addresses of a different system, and having that. These Microsoft Teams rooms, for their forefront purpose, is to make meetings easy and make meetings more inclusive and better for everyone who's attending. So you've got the chat, you've got the raise hand. With the chat, I can tell you, Michel, one of my favorite features of Teams rooms is the companion mode that you don't get when you're just doing a USB peripheral or something like that. So companion mode is a huge, huge piece of why you're putting in Microsoft Teams rooms, because it helps make that meeting better for everybody. Now, there's nothing that says, hey, I have to bring a device into the room that I'm having a meeting in. I can experience that meeting just with no other device that's inside of the room. But at the same point, you know, I come from the idea of a control solution. And, you know, when I start the meeting, maybe I want the shades to come down. Maybe I want all these other things. And that's a little bit more complicated of a room. But one of the basis of the premises of control is, I need to know that you're inside of the room, and I need to know it's you. And that's what companion mode is solving. When you walk into a room, you might have your mobile device, and Microsoft knows this is you that's on that mobile device. They also know that you're inside of a Microsoft Teams room. So think about the power that we can do, not only now, but in the future as well, when we can nudge people and we can say, would you like to join this meeting on your personal device? And you do. Now, previously, you would have to hunt for the mute button, the speaker button. You would have to search for all these so that you don't get the feedback. You don't get the bad audio that traditionally used to happen when I brought a new device into the room. Because we know that you're inside of a Teams room, and because we know who you are and your personal device is there, Microsoft is automatically going to join in the companion mode experience, which means speaker, microphone are all muted. And that's key to the experience. Again, making it easy for people to get into those rooms.
Love it. Let's take some questions. And if you have questions and you're watching this live, feel free to ask them in the chat. So Rui, I'm hoping I'm pronouncing that right, is asking which devices are approved or recommended. I'm also posting a link here from Mo, who's on my team, with the link to all the devices. But you do not need a special device to have access to the front row layout, correct?
You don't. all Microsoft Teams Room Windows devices right now are in preview mode. Now there are some things that sort of features that you have to look at, and you have to say, what am I getting here? I know, Michel, we talked in preparation for this about 21 by 9 actually being an aspect ratio. And those of you that are in AV might know the difference between 16 by 9 and 20 by 9. And that's really where the partners come into play, and understanding what devices can actually do all of these different layouts. And depending on the OEM that you're actually going into, it's going to be up to them what resolutions and what layouts you can actually access and use. So that's one thing. But front row as a layout itself, regardless of the aspect ratio or the resolution that you're doing, that is on all Windows devices right now. Android devices will be coming later. Originally, it was thought maybe the Android might not have the power to do all of this and everything else. The product group has been very clear that front row is coming to Android devices. It's one of those things, as you develop on Windows and Android systems, while we would love all the features to be 100% GA at the same time on all devices, there's different ways of developing those systems. And it's different development tools and the way that you actually develop on Android and Windows that makes one better than another for certain features. You can talk about other things that might be not inside of Androids and Windows, and you can look at them and you can see the reason why is because many times it's on one because it's easier to develop that feature on that platform, and it takes more time on the other platform. But like I said, Android is something that front row is coming to. The product group has been very, very clear on that. And I see that Peter is 21 by 9 for the win. So we've got some AV people in here. That,
we'll get to that in a second, by the way. So in a second, we should talk about creating the best experience now, talking about what we've learned so far in this preview, because Melanie is asking when we get this rollout launch date estimated. So front row public preview now. Let's speak about how the update process works. I learned something new there last week. So out now, same for Companion. So the Companion is already in the both the iOS and the Android app. So you can start using that now, and the preview is now available for front row. Speak a bit about, because you can explain this better than I can, the update process of the version of Teams that's running on MTR.
So on the Windows side, the version of Teams that actually runs on Windows, it's an application that runs locally on the box. But since Teams is a cloud-based service, it gives developers the opportunity to actually enable features through what's called the web client. And many people actually saw in the release notes of the Windows side, I think a couple months ago, it actually called out the web client. The web client has been there for years. It's not something new. I think it's just something that we sort of brought out and we said, hey, the web client is going to update you to front row. And really the reason why was because on the release notes, it said front row is enabled. But what happened was everybody said, where is front row? I downloaded all these firmware versions. I downloaded all of this, but it had to be turned on the web client updates. And that is another way that Microsoft can sort of take and roll out updates to the systems. It's more dynamic, it's more controllable, and it's a much better way in the cloud version of doing things. So while we've got firmware versions, you've got the Windows, let's just talk about Windows for now. Mm-hmm. You've got the Windows, you've got the application version. The application version is what enables those web updates to come down. So if you don't see a certain feature, but I'm on this certain site, now I've got to look at the web updates and make sure that those are GA. So while front row is GA, it's not GA yet, it's in preview mode, you can see that it's actually on your systems and you've got that availability of choosing front row. Now, Michel, one of the things that the product group did really, really well this time is with the introduction of front row, you've got the availability of choosing your default layout when you walk into a room. And it's not a global, hey, let's turn on front row everywhere. It's per device that I can actually take the XML script and I can say, I want when people walk into this room and they start a meeting, this should be the default layout. That doesn't mean that we get rid of the other layouts. that means that this is the default layout that they will see. All users will still continue to have the availability of choosing what layout they want to see. But if you've got a room like that panoramic room that is really, really geared towards front row, this is why I commend the product group on. If that's geared towards front row, we should have the availability of walking into that room and not requiring the user to actually do anything to start his meeting and have the best experience. So the layout is going to be per device. You can actually do it across your entire organization if you want to as well, but it's going to be a per device in the XML side. That will likely come to Teams Admin Center in the future, where you
Right.
manage all of your devices.
One thing that people often think is that because your Microsoft Teams rooms reboots or updates every night, I think the time is 2 a.m. or 3 a.m.
2 a.m.
That's the moment when you get all these new features. That all depends on if the Windows update or the store update actually ran before the reboot, correct?
Correct. What happens is there is the 2 a.m. reboot, and it goes into what's called the maintenance cycle. And there are scripts that actually run in the background that make sure that, hey, let's make sure that we give it time to update. Let's make sure that we're looking at the right place for update, whether it's the store, whether it's the Windows update. Some people actually still manage these through SCCM. Some manage through Intune. Updates are an important part of the Microsoft Teams rooms, and that 2 a.m. sort of cycle that we go through is to make sure that everything's there. That may also be the time that it actually gets those web updates and can come down. But it's an important part of the Microsoft Teams room experience that this not be inhibited. I don't know many people. I myself am not attending meetings at 2 a.m., but maybe they are. And we will not reboot if you're inside of a meeting. So just know that these sort of things are there for protections. It's not an automatic, hey, we're just going to go do this and we're not going to warn the user of these things. The idea is to make sure that these are updating at the times that people aren't necessarily using the systems. And we want to make sure that the systems are there for use during the time of day that a majority of people will use them. But if they are using them at an off time period, we've also got protections in there so that things don't happen automatically.
Good stuff. Let's talk about this this layout, because one of the questions David is asking: when will the action items be added, and how will items be added to that listing? So what you
So
have now on the left hand side. Go ahead. Oh, go ahead.
yeah, so we've got the raised hands and we've got the chat. These are going to be loop components. Action items, agenda, all of these things are loop components that can be put in. It's not released yet. It's not really sort of out to the public yet, which gives the product team a great opportunity to sort of take suggestions and make sure that they're the way that customers want them. We have gotten feedback from a lot of large customers on, well, I'd like to see this. Well, I'd like to be able to control things. There's nothing that says that that's not there yet, but since it's not actually released from even into TAP at this point, it's not released from the product group. There's not a lot of guidance that we can give you. Oh, this is how it's going to work. But just know that these are dynamic components. And as something like loop updates, that's going to come into the Teams room systems. Michel, I think one of the things that we should probably point out is Teams room systems works off of many of the base code of Teams itself. So it's that idea of progressing from your personal device up to the shared spaces. And on our personal devices, many times we see features before we see them inside of Teams rooms. We don't see every single feature that comes to a personal device inside of Teams rooms, but if it's applicable to that shared space, that's where it can be worked in. And that's really what Microsoft itself, software is king here. And if we can take it from the personal device all the way through to the shared space and make sure that the code is very, very similar in all the ways that it rolls through, that means that the end users are going to get a more familiar experience from their personal device all the way to the shared rooms. And that's really what the Microsoft product group is trying to do, is make sure that we're using as much code as we can. We're making sure that these are running in the way that IT teams are familiar with updating, making sure that these are not something that's unique or just, oh, I have to do this just for these Teams rooms. Let's make sure that it's one ecosystem. So when I'm managing my phones, when I'm managing my Microsoft Teams rooms on Windows, when I'm managing Microsoft Teams rooms on Android, or even Surface Hub, let's make sure they come into Teams Admin Center. And let's make sure that they're actually using Active Directory for all of their authentication. And let's make sure that role-based authentication, who's allowed to see these devices and administrate these devices, it's all something familiar to the IT teams of our customers that are out there, and it's not something new.
Right. Okay. Let's get a few more questions. Denzel, my guy, is asking up to how
Love that
many
though. Yeah.
participants are visible in front row. That depends whether you're using single or dual screen, right?
Correct. We released last month. We actually released the idea of gallery across the two different screens, and front row is taking advantage of that gallery that actually goes across the different screens. So in the dual mode of front row, you can actually spotlight people. You can have that left-hand side spotlight while the right side is content, and then you still got the gallery on the bottom of the view. I think one of the feedback that I heard a while ago was somebody had said that the gallery people on the bottom are actually a little bit too large, and they'd rather have a little bit more space for the content. So that's something that the product group looked at, and they're evaluating, and they're saying, hey, this might be something that we like to see. If you haven't seen the interview yet with Greg Barabal and Nicole Hershowitz, they are sitting in a front row room, and you can see that they're actually having a live Teams meeting with front row, and you can see how that room and that layout is really corresponding to the front row experience, and making sure that many of the things that were in what was called immersive telepresence, the good things from immersive telepresence, are brought forward. You know, there's a lot of difficulty with immersive telepresence. We talked about the complicated dial strings, all the different things that go with that, but that is a legacy technology. But there are some good things that can be adapted and shared and brought forward from that. And that is one of the things that front row is doing, is looking at all of the things of the past and making sure we're not just going, hey, you've got to learn a new way to work. You've got to learn a new way of actually meeting. You've got to learn a new way of having this. Many of the things that are taken in front row are things that actually worked in the past and brought forward. But things like the raised hand and the chat, those are new components that immersive telepresence just won't have the ability to do, to bring you into that new age of collaborative experiences like Teams. You know, a month ago, the whiteboard app was actually updated. And I know that, you know, Michel, I do a selling Microsoft Teams rooms with Marin every week, where it's the fastest 10 minutes of Teams rooms every week. And we brought up the whiteboard, and Marin had tried the whiteboard for the first time. She goes, "This is amazing, Jimmy," right? And she was actually using the digital inking, all of the different things that she was doing. But that's the idea of this collaborative feature, is to make sure that when you're truthfully collaborating, you're not only doing it on your personal device, because we know that shared spaces are going to be able to do this as well, but making sure that the technology is there so you can bring it forward into those shared spaces as well.
Right. We have a Michael Tressler in the comments. Thanks, Michael, for helping us answer all these questions.
Michael Tressler, one of the
find it.
best, most informative
Yes,
people on
sir.
Teams Room. You can
Yes,
take
sir.
his suggestions and say, yes, these are the way things work.
100%. He has a solution for the content being a little bit smaller on some of the screens. Either switch the gallery or buy huge monitors. I think that's
Huge
it.
monitors.
That's a great one.
Huge monitors. I think it brings up that one of those things about how front row was actually brought to market by the marketing teams. One of the things that you see, even in the video that you showed, is that huge single screen. And don't be sort of tricked by this. Those are actually two outputs of a Microsoft Teams room system that are edge blending into a projector scene that have 210-inch projectors. Now, that layout isn't quite there yet for the edge blending. I know that it's something that the product group is working on, but right now, two screens, separating those two screens, will give you a similar feel. Can you get to the 110 inches if you've got the projectors? Absolutely. Can I then blend those two images when that's available? Absolutely. So to Michael's point, big screens help tremendously inside of some of these rooms. It's not for every single room, but front row isn't for every single room. But when you do have front row, you probably want to make sure you're at like a 46-inch or a 50-inch display as a minimum, because there are elements that actually need to be seen, like the content. And when you're sharing the content into the meeting, you want to make sure that those people that are inside of the room, even if it's just two people, don't think, oh, I can just put this small thing in and I'll have a front row layout. Some of those monitors need to be the appropriate size to actually see an Excel spreadsheet that somebody's sharing, or the content from the PowerPoint. If we've got small text, if we've got something that's there, make sure it's appropriate for that room. And I think we've been sitting between the 46 and 50 inch is the smallest that we would probably see with our partners out in the field.
Yep. Let's go into some of the things that we've learned, because this is indeed still it's in preview. We're getting a bunch of feedback back. Let's talk about some of the things, and maybe even some guidance about how to get the optimal experience now, while we implement some of these new things.
The biggest thing, and I want to thank SciViz. If you don't know who they are, go out and look them up. They actually posted a good picture from the Boston Technology Center, showing front row and showing how those two outputs actually look on a larger screen. But some of the things that people ran into, they were scaling windows, and they were scaling windows for other layouts, which was okay. When you do it, you can sort of put it into a room and you can say, hey, I want to see the text larger. I want to do that. That's something that Windows gave you the availability to do. But with front row, because we've got these dynamic elements, because we've got different areas of the screen, scaling wasn't really working when it was 110 or 120% like some people had done. So you've got to go back in. You've got to actually make sure that your scaling size is 100%, and that will give you the 1080p 16:9 image on there. Making sure that that you've got enough room for the 4 participants on the front row. If you've got a smaller screen, maybe you want to add that second screen to show up to 9 videos on that dual screen. Maybe that will help your content inside of those smaller rooms. But a lot of this needs to sort of be thought about before you put it inside of the room. One of the things that actually came out on the preview is you can turn front row off as an option too. Let's say I put in a small screen, Michel, and I don't want to redo this room. I don't want to actually say, oh, my users are going to have a poor experience if they choose front row. Take it off. And there is that availability in the settings as well to say, do not show a front row experience inside of this room. But even the design guidance, like you see on the slide here, just having that camera at eye level. And this is from our partners at Poly. They actually did a really good job with their new camera. And prior to actually their release of the camera itself, it was being used as a test case inside of many front row rooms that were built in Redmond and Seattle, so that the experience could be finalized and worked out what worked, what didn't work. And that's really where front row came from, was Microsoft hired human behavioralists. And what's the experience to make sure that it's more natural to be inside of the room? Greg Barabalt talks about one of the things that will be coming is spatial audio. And if you don't want to know what spatial audio is the idea that in a natural environment, in the real world, if somebody were to drop something to my left, my eyes and my head would immediately turn to the left. And that's a natural movement. That's a natural experience. Well, what happens inside of a meeting room? Audio is coming from the speaker, and it's coming from all of the speakers that are there. Spatial audio now takes it to a new level. You can see at the bottom there's a full gallery of people. And if I'm on the left side in the gallery view, my audio should be coming from the left side, reducing the fatigue that is in your brain of having these meetings. When it comes from the left side, my head will immediately go to the left, and I will then be engaged with my picture on the screen. And that's what spatial audio can do, is just make these things easier. They spent hours, hundreds and thousands of hours inside of rooms out in Seattle, making sure, what can we do to make this easier? The idea of Zoom fatigue, it's real. Zoom fatigue, if you're gonna go with the good, Michael, as a company, you're gonna go with the bad too. So Zoom fatigue is real. I like to sort of put that out there and say that. But Zoom fatigue is real. We're on meetings all day long, much more than we used to be. The more natural And the more conductive we can do to have an in-person experience with remote people, that's the idea of what we can do, and what these layouts can actually help foster and help customers sort of put into their experiences.
Right. Let's see. Let's be conscious of time. We have a few minutes left. Let me see, Paul. AV industry standards recommend that due to the smaller content size within Microsoft Front Row, we need to transition to larger screen size than we're used to. Old standards are gone. We have some guidance on this, right?
We have a little bit of guidance on this. All of it isn't there yet. I know that Greg Jeffries, who actually works with Avixa, which is the AV industry standards, they've got a whole bunch of stuff. He's been posting a whole bunch of things on LinkedIn, guidance towards 16 by 9, 21 by 9, different room sizes, how to do lighting, how to do a whole bunch of things. He's been a great
Yeah.
resource to sort of put out there. I know that he's reached out to me personally. Greg, if you're on here, I haven't gotten a chance to really reach out yet, but you are somebody that we do want to sort of work with and make sure that the standards that are in the AV community, I don't believe that they're gone. I just believe that there's some things that people need to understand. The idea of throwing a screen in with a device and saying, hey, I'm good for everything, that's not really where we are. We don't want to get rid of the AV industry. We want to make sure that the AV industry is there consistently doing what they've been doing for years. Make sure that they are fulfilling the customer's questions and the customer's needs with what is there. Let them have a good experience. Michel, one of the things, I'm designing a house. I'm not going and getting an 85-inch TV because that's the largest one that I can put in my room. I'm making sure that I'm comfortable inside of that room with the size of the TV is there. And there are standards that are worked out on the thing. And Greg, I see that you're there, so thank you for everything that you're putting out there. And I do owe you a meeting. I promise we'll get to that at some point in the future. But
let's get him on the show.
Yeah, I think maybe next month we bring Greg on and we bring a whole bunch of guidance towards Front Row. I think that would be a great deal. But like we said, this show once a month, we're going to get technical here. This is going to be a lot more technical than other things that you've seen out in the field as well.
Yep, good stuff. Let me see if there's any final questions. Again, Michael, thanks so much for helping out on the chat. Denzel, thank you. Mo, thank you. Let me see if we missed anything. This one maybe. Can we have presentation view and gallery view separately to different screens?
I thought that was still in the dual screen mode. I don't know that we've gotten rid of that. That was the original way that people had dual screen setups, was people were on one screen and content on the other. I don't know that we've gotten rid of that. I didn't think we did.
No, I
don't know if anybody can put inside of the comments, Michael or somebody else that can say, oh yeah, it's still on dual screen. You have that availability. But like I said, we used to have that. I'd be surprised if we got rid of anything. Doesn't like something we would get rid of.
Yep, same. Let me see if we can get one final question. Man, so many in here. Thanks again, everybody, for tuning in. It's great to see so many people from all over the world. Question from Lars. Lars is doing an amazing job, by the way, as well, out there in the partner community. Thanks you, Lars, for everything. Can we have a certified list of intelligent cameras?
As soon as the intelligent camera category is released, Lars, we'll have a certified list. Right now, it's something that's being spoken about. It's being worked on internally. There are partners that have been announced publicly. I do believe that Poly, Jabra,
the P50,
and Logitech have all been announced publicly as part of the intelligent camera category. If I am forgetting a partner, I do apologize. Those are the three that comes to mind. I think that Hudley has been doing some work as well. I know that they've got the idea of being able to send all of the participants in a single screen. And that's something, Michel, that we should probably talk about as well. Intelligent camera is a new category where it's going to split people into different streams itself. Neat has their symmetry right now that actually separates people into different boxes and sends it as a single stream. That is not part of the intelligent camera functionality. That is a part of the camera itself being able to send that. And there are other partners that are doing the same, where they're going to actually bring that those people that are in the room, separate them into screens, and give them their own screen, thus eliminating a little bit of what has been called the bowling alley effect, where you've got that long room of people and you can't tell who it is. We're getting people a little bit more presented into the meeting, but I think what you're going to see with the intelligent camera side is that it's going to bring this idea even further, because the cameras should be able to send us not only the panoramic view or those chopped up views as a single stream, but you're going to get 5 camera streams as a solution, meaning that I can have that panoramic view. I can also have individual views, and everybody gets their own box. We didn't talk about, but one of the things that the product group is also doing is making sure that it fits a little bit more like the marketing display that you've got at Front Row, where everybody's background was black. If you think about on the desktop application, we've got a thing called Together Mode. And Together Mode takes different backgrounds and it puts it together. I did a thing the other day with internally with Denzel. He turned on Together Mode. Together Mode is an application. Again, it works on the desktop. Together Mode is an application that can break some of that background out of our individual streams and put us on a common background. And that's the idea of where they want to get to. And that's why that part, I had a lot of questions around, will we be doing the black part of the background on the actual Front Row view? And yes, that is something we want to get to. That is something that they are striving towards. And it's going to be something like Together Mode. So if you want to try it out and see what it looks like in your Teams client, go to Together Mode today.
Yes. Any plans 4K display support for Front Row? I think the answer is yes.
Yes.
And
4K resolution is there. So
yeah, great from Liam. Liam, thanks for joining as well. Got ideas about how to make these meetings better. I saw a few in the comment section. Please submit feedback. The product team is listening. I think that's very important. Everything that you have, please send it through the resources that are available, and give us feedback so we can continue to make our products even better. Let's close here. Jimmy, I very much enjoyed this first session. So this is Microsoft Teams Rooms Tech Talk. It's going to be live every month. We're going to be distributing it through YouTube, LinkedIn, Twitter, and then I'll make sure we post it on all the podcast platforms as well for those that cannot join live. Thanks so much, everybody, for watching and tuning in and being interactive. Thanks, everybody, for supporting us in the comments. Jimmy, I had fun.
Thank you. And I'm looking forward to this. I think you and I have spoken. We've got a lot of topics coming up. I think even some of the things that we said here, I'm excited about this Microsoft Teams Room Tech Talk. I'm excited to get a little bit more technical, dive in. I think we've got a whole bunch of people even on the back end that we're going to be bringing in the next couple months. So look out for it. Make sure you follow us, and thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Goodbye. Have a good one.
You too.